Bang. Uh, Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Leftist Audio. You may have seen us show up a little earlier today to disappear, but we're back for real this time. My name is Aaron. I'm joined by my constant co-hosts, Josh and Brent, which we now have name tags below our names, so I think that'll help everyone in the chat. I know, production value. Watch out.
Less stuff by the day.
I know. We should even have fairly balanced audio levels this time. So we're in. It's definitely 2021 now, gentlemen. Yeah. I must say.
We're finally brought up to the future.
But for today, we're going to be discussing some of the hot items involving the impeachment, as that's been kind of the hot topic this past week. And then Brent and I are going to have a small debate, kind of moderated by Josh there on the far left, regarding if it is fair for moderate Dems to be pushed further left as we're moving into a Democrat-owned, controlled federal government, really.
Yeah, they don't own the government, but they do control it.
Supposedly we the people do, but you know how that goes. So all of that said, let's go ahead and hop into the impeachment topic to start off, since get a little update on the news today. So just so everyone is aware, the House has issued the official articles of impeachment. So the Senate has received those. But I want to just make sure everyone understands that with impeachment, to actually convict President Trump, it requires a 2/3 majority. So don't think this is something a simple majority can do. It actually does take 2/3. And the other clarification I want to make before we discuss kind of what's going on is that even if you are impeached and it passes and you're convicted, that actually does not bar you from holding office again. A second vote must be held, which is only a simple majority, to ban you from taking office again, whether that's president or elsewhere. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aligned on what the actual mechanics of impeachment are before we got into the discussion.
Now, have you looked into this any further than the surface level? Because there is a question that I had, which was, can they have the barring you from running for federal office again without a conviction?
Okay, so I had actually been looking into that because I was curious. And from what I can tell, it's kind of a legal gray area. So potentially is what I'll leave it at.
Because I genuinely think they have more Republican votes for barring him from running again than they do for
actually convicting him. I agree.
Yeah.
It seems like there's been some drama, though, after, the Capitol Hill, I don't even know what to call it at this point. Terrorist attack. You're right. Yeah. Let's not hold back here.
It's not myth words here.
Yeah. But I don't know. It'll be interesting. What's also interesting is it's kind of in a legal gray area, even if they get the votes to impeach him, in that technically the Constitution only outlines explicitly, I would be the correct term. It only explicitly outlines being able to impeach a sitting president. It doesn't necessarily have to be a president, but someone currently serving in office. So if this happens after we have the Biden inauguration and then he's out, it's actually kind of in a weird area, legally speaking, as to whether the impeachment kind of holds there, if you will. I don't know if y'all had been reading about that, but I thought it was curious. There's a lot of bumps along the way of a conviction, whether it's they can fight it in the courts regarding, the fact that he's on his way out, or, of course, the immediate issue of getting a 2/3 majority.
Well, I think, the House, has officially impeached him. Now, the conviction, has to come from the Senate, but it has happened while he is still, actively president. up until Wednesday at noon this week. So at least in my opinion, I'm obviously no constitutional scholar or legal scholar, but the impeachment did happen and he was officially impeached while he was in office. So I would assume that the Senate coming into either, convict or acquit, that can happen, at any time afterwards. But it did happen. He was officially impeached while he was in office. So I would think there are grounds to continue with the trial in the Senate. Um, Once the Senate returns from their recess, on Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. They'll return.
So there's a report out this morning that apparently Republicans are setting up to essentially defend Trump by saying you can't convict him on an impeachment post him leaving office, which is one of those legal gray areas. And because they are Republicans, they're going to find a way to squirm their way out of this without having to take responsibility for it. And yeah, as Toyota Echo points out in the chat, there is historical precedent for judges facing convictions in Senate trials after they left office, but who cares when it comes to McConnell and all of them? Republicans are just going to say, yeah, maybe, but actually, no, we're not going
to
go on record and be
quick take. Does anyone here think that there will be a 2/3 majority to convict?
No, I don't think so. I think, we already saw in the House, there were, I believe, 192 cowards who didn't want to condemn the terrorist attack that we saw on the 6th. So I really don't think that we're going to get a 2/3 majority in the Senate. That's kind of just like a wish list at this point. But I do agree with what we were talking about earlier. I do think there is a higher shot at them barring him from holding future office than there is probably from actually confirming this impeachment, unfortunately, even though they both should pass pretty easily.
Yeah, I was just curious. I'm in the same boat. I don't think that there's really any chance of a 2/3 majority conviction. I will say, if we were going to see it, I think we would have heard something out of McConnell at this point. Had he actually had some sentiment towards it or said something publicly, then I would say maybe, but we'll have to see. I am curious, though, how the barring from holding public office plays out, if they can do that without an actual conviction or not. As I think that would be the real win and actually have true impacts for 2024.
Now, is that that process of barring someone from holding office, is that explicitly tied to impeachment, or is this like an independent function of the government that would be brought up in the same circumstances as an impeachment? Or is this all part of the impeachment process, barring someone from holding public office? I don't know if anyone actually knows that here, but it might play into the House and the Senate considering exercising the 14th Amendment to bar Cruz and Hawley and others from holding public office, or actually, I guess, kicking them out of Congress, like the current session of Congress, which hopefully that actually gains some traction. Hopefully Democrats have a spine and throw out the people who helped enable the terrorist attack of the 6th.
But I don't know if you I think it is tied to impeachment specifically. But I do think the conversation around throwing members out of Congress is going to be dependent on their actions in like the immediate actions before the insurrection happened. I think Lauren Boebert is really the one in trouble right now. If you follow a lot of Democratic House representatives on Twitter right now, a lot of them are coming out and saying, I didn't give a tour to anyone in the weeks preceding the insurrection. That's pretty easy. And I know like Brian Schatt, I think, was the big one behind that, which is essentially them saying, hey, guess what? Somebody gave a tour. to a bunch of insurrectionists the week before they did an insurrection and told them where to go. And it's looking more and more likely like that is specifically on Boebert, who is a QAnon candidate coming out of Colorado. She is insane, and potentially Marjorie Taylor Greene, though it really does seem to be centering around Boebert. Who also, just fun fact, her husband was arrested after exposing himself to two 14-year-old girls. But QAnon is totally about children and
Peas in
saving
a
them.
pod.
But whatever.
Peas in a pod.
Oh, and they also run a novelty restaurant where they're it's all about guns and shooting. Like that's it. That's literally it. Her husband owns a restaurant. That's the whole thing.
Lead flavored food, my favorite. Get a little GSR on your steak. Mwah. Chef's kiss, delicious.
They actually use gunpowder instead of pepper there.
Oh, dude, my favorite spice personally, especially as a white person. We don't season our food too heavily, but sprinkle a little GSR on there. Tasty.
So I will say, I was looking into, while we were discussing that, I was looking into whether the Senate could do that vote to bar him from public office. It does seem like it's tied to impeachment. However, some experts are saying even if they do not convict, they could still potentially hold that vote. It seems like the constitutional lawyers are a little split on this, which I think that makes sense. We don't have too many impeachments, unsurprisingly. So the actual exercising of this will be, we'll have to see.
And essentially, if it's split, that means that it's Calvin ball, which means they can do whatever they want. So like it essentially means, hey, do Democrats have a spine to do it? Then they can do it.
Yeah, and that's unlikely. I don't see Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley getting kicked out of the Senate, even though they 100% should. Boebert will probably be the sacrificial lamb of the House. And that'll probably be it. There'll probably just be one person expelled from Congress, and the rest of them, will be like, and don't do that again, Ted Cruz. Don't do that again, Josh Hawley. And we'll get probably another, I think they've learned their lesson kind of thing, which is quite frankly just some bullshit. But whatever. Democrats aren't particularly known for their spines, so
yeah.
Let's see. Did you guys see that the My Pillow guy has recently been to the White House to console Trump in his hour of need as we're entering the twilight of Trump's presidency? The My Pillow guy showed up with plans to enact martial law to replace the head of the CIA and probably a bunch of other wackadoo conspiracies, along with how he could, I don't know, outfit the entire White House with My Pillows or something like that.
Yeah, it just goes to show how small Trump's circle is getting and how more and more fringe it is. I mean, when Sidney Powell is his consult every day, it's not looking good. And I mean, going back to even impeachment, Rudy Giuliani seems to be literally the only lawyer that will defend him, because this is a trial and he needs a lawyer, and he can't find anyone other than Rudy, who he doesn't want, because Rudy has been charging him. Yeah, Rudy's been charging him $20,000 a day. $20,000 for Rudy Giuliani, Mr. Dentures falling out of his mouth, hair dye running down his sideburn, yelling about a kraken. So yeah, Trump's not in a good position right now, and certainly not going to be in office past January 20th. But it is just a fun ride to be on.
Kayleigh McEnany bailed. I don't know if anyone saw that over the weekend. She was like, I'm out of here. And I honestly thought she would be there to the bitter end. I'm talking noon on Wednesday, like holding Trump's hand, watching the ship go down. But she bailed. So we'll see. We'll see who he can cling on to in these last 3 days.
It's just gonna be him screaming into a void.
Yeah.
Are y'all excited for his news network he's gonna start, if he does still start it?
See, the thing is, he can't run a business, so that's gonna fail. Like, media networks are already failing right now. Like, even the big ones are hurting. And so, yeah, him starting a business in a failing industry is just the perfect summation of Trump as a whole. And I can't wait for everyone to say, like, oh, yeah, it's going to be this giant media conglomerate, and then fail just as hard as Trump Steaks did.
Well, speaking of media failing, Fox News is now hitting all-time lows. Fell below both CNN and MSNBC for the first time since 2000.
And you want to know why?
Terrorist attack on the Capitol.
Well,
because
they're
fucking enablers of this insane behavior that we've seen from the far right. But then all of a sudden they were dubbed not right enough because of OAN and Newsmax. Right after the election, Fox actually decided that, hey, we're not just going to openly lie and tell people that Trump won. So as soon as they were like, it looks like Trump's going to lose, everyone was like, liberals, and they bailed. So,
I think it's funny though. It's all part of this fracturing of the right we were talking about in the last episode. They're at a crossroads, and they need to pretty quickly, in my opinion, make a decision. They're either going to re-embrace the cult of Trump, or they need to jump ship. I think if they were going to jump ship, though, we would see that impeachment actually getting traction. We'd see McConnell come out and say something. And that's why I was kind of interested.
The McConnell conservative, though. Fox News is the McConnell level. They do support Trump, but just they don't say it out loud. You don't. You're presenting yourself as this balanced person, just trying to push the conservative movement, but balanced in terms of the conservative party. And you just support Trump's agenda without explicitly supporting Trump and everything. But they ride this line between their news segment, which is that, and their opinion segment, which is just explicitly pro-Trump all the time. Everything is pro-Trump. So it's a really fine line that they are going to have to continue to tight walk, because if they push it too far either way, they lose audience members, right? They do have these conservative voters that are, anti-Trump culture but pro-Trump policy, which is another topic. But
how insane is that? Like,
don't even get me started. I could go on for hours.
I'm gonna let that one go, but still.
But they have to ride a line, because they were the singular place for conservative media consumption. For a long time, they enjoyed that, but now the conservatives are just a little bit split between, are we Trump or are we a conservative party? And right now they don't know which side of that line to ride, so they're just staying straight in the middle of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, like you guys were saying, it would probably be more beneficial for Republicans like Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz to ban Trump from running for office, even though they're going to turn around and try to be Trump 2.0 with a little more mask on than mask off. Try to be a smarter fascist, basically.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there is a 0% chance Cruz and Hawley vote to ban Trump from running.
Hawley they won't.
Their theory of the case is retaining the Trump base.
Yeah.
So they're going to need those voters that are going to absolutely hate them for doing it.
They specifically wouldn't ban, but I think the Republican Party, as an almost singularly minded entity controlled by Mitch McConnell, at least the Senate, you're going to have those people who are allowed to vote pro barring him from office, because it helps the party as a whole, get rid of the pariah, basically.
Yeah, only the people where it's electorally viable will vote yes, and they'll ensure that it's not enough yeses for it to matter. It's the same thing they did when they had some controversial piece of legislation, and they said, oh, we'll just make it 50, so, Lindsey Graham, do you want the no on this one? Romney, is it your turn to get the no? And then they'd have Pence come in and break the tie. It's straight out of their playbook. Exactly. So,
yeah, 100%.
Really unsurprising. I don't know. I hope in these next 4 years we can go back to, like, you know, when Fox News attacked Obama for using Dijon mustard. I liked it more when that was our news cycle and it was just something absolutely heinous that did not matter.
I think that's what a lot of the next 4 years is going to be. It's a lot, you know, be a lot of Democrats dragging their feet, you know, for the next 2 to 4 years. And it'll be a lot of, you know, Fox News attacks on Justice Dems. It'll be a lot of nitpicking at Biden, because I think Biden is going to try to rock the boat and make as few waves as humanly possible. And basically just try to sit still, you know, that way he doesn't piss anybody off. So, but speaking of Justice Dems, I think we're gonna kick off the great debate here. And I'm just gonna kind of throw out a topic question. I'm gonna let Aaron go first because I know Brent, like a rabid animal, wants to be uncaged on this topic.
Moderator's already showing his bias. I see how.
Yeah, I am.
Moderators are anti-left biased. It's fine.
Yeah. You know me, enlightened centrist here.
Yeah. Brent will not be returning for this town hall. I can see
it. So the question of this debate is: should the moderate Dems, centrist Dems, people like Joe Manchin, should they be forced further left by the Justice Dems, SOC Dems, you know, people like Bernie Sanders, AOC, people like that? So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you, Aaron, and eventually we'll let Brent cut in when he's chomping at the bit.
Perfect. So before I even get into this, I want to define a moderate Dem and a Justice Dem. I think you did a pretty good job, so I'll just go with the examples. But the Justice Dems, a lot more progressive. And I also want to start off this by saying it's not that I necessarily disagree with a lot of the policies that the Justice Dems are trying to push. However, I think that with Democrats controlling all three branches of the federal government, there's going to be a large push from the further left groups to try and be a little too progressive for the moderate Dems. And what I mean by that is, you know, we're going to look at things like the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, a single payer healthcare system, you know, that sort of stuff. And we're going to have factions within the Democratic Party pushing and almost kind of cannibalizing the other Democrats that are not willing to support that. Again, it's not that I'm against these policies, but I look out and I've seen, you know, we've seen interviews from like the Majority Whip, James Clyburn, just last year in November after the federal election. You know, he sits there and he's quoting the fact that it's becoming more difficult for moderate Dems to continue to win their seats against their Republican counterparts when they have these more extremist messages out there, like defund the police, things that scare Democrat voters in these less progressive areas. And so I think we're going to see a lot of bullying from within the left to try and push these more radical policies. And I frankly don't think that is very fair to the moderate Dems. They have to stay in what is electorally viable, or else they're going to lose. And you know what? We're not going to see or continue to see this Democrat majority. And so that's why I think that it's important that we come together and we compromise more so than sit there and try and attack each other internally. It needs to be a united front against the Republicans.
All right, Brent, you know, I'll go ahead and let you make your kind of opening statements on this, but how do you feel? I know obviously the most left of all of us here, but how do you feel that the Justice Dems should handle the next 2 years heading into midterms and then heading into 2024?
So, I'll just start out by saying, Aaron, I'm not going to be attacking you. I genuinely would like to convince you on this topic because I think
no, that's fine.
I think the debate here centers around a few things that all Democrats should be wanting to do, which is retaining power. Do you want to retain power? Let's look at what happened post the last time Democrats got through all three branches of government. They got, in Obama's terms, shellacked. They got crushed for the next decade. Why did that happen? That happened because Democrats, with all three branches of government, essentially, did nothing. They bailed out banks instead of people. They passed half-assed healthcare measures that Republicans were able to attack because they were so in the weeds about it. They couldn't even get a public option through because of these conservative members. And what did it do? All of the compromising, Obama literally put Republicans on his cabinet. He literally put Republicans in his cabinet as a form of compromise. He said, we are going to be the Big Tent. And all it did was cause them to be defeated over and over by a party that had a unified opposition message, which was Democrats aren't doing shit. And they were right. So if we look at just one moment, if we look at what happened in 2020, we have a rosier picture now because they do have all three branches. But Democrats got beat in the House. They have a 3-vote majority right now, barely. And if you look at the members of Congress, the swing districts that they lost, it was the conservative districts where members were for nothing. Every swing district where a candidate was for Medicare for All and the Green New Deal, that swing district, so these are usually more conservative districts, won. And it's because their candidates can sit down and say they are for something and not give stupid soliloquy bullshit about unifying the country or I'm for the soul of this nation. No, I am for a specific policy that gives you this. Politics is transactional and I am out to give you this, not I'm here to give you compromise. And that's better politics.
Can I respond to a few of those? Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So I want to start with, I agree that I'm not saying I think that the Obama administration took the wrong approach of compromising too much with the Republicans. I'm not saying we should go that route again, but I am saying at the end of the day, if we can't go all the way left, then we need the Democrats to form a united front and be willing, that's the key thing here, to compromise internally on some of this to still move the policy forward. I mean, you look at the Republicans, we talk about like the Tea Party caucus. I don't think they go by that officially anymore. I forget the term that they're going by today, but they have a lot of power in the Republican Party to shift that legislation. And they don't always get what they want, but neither does the general standard sort of what the party wants. And so it's fine to have groups like the Justice Dems push for that, but they have to be willing to compromise at a certain point to actually pass things and move forward. To your point about the people within the party, I'm just saying, like, let's go back to Obamacare. I agree we should have pushed to get a public option, period, full stop. Like, if we couldn't do single payer and move completely, they should have at least pushed harder than just stopping at that weak piece of legislation we had before.
But why was it weak? Because the farthest left option, the leftist option, was the public option. So what did they do? They compromised and removed the public option. And what I'm telling you is what you are saying right now is the reason we don't have a public option right now. Instead of unifying behind the progressive and popular legislation that was put on the
I
table.
disagree that these are popular pieces of legislation.
But
nationally they may be. But look at the Senate. Do you know why we have a majority in the Senate? I'll tell you what, it's not because Ossoff and Warnock were out there arguing for Medicare for all. That would not be electorally viable.
It's because they were out there advocating for $2,000 checks.
Mm-hmm.
They were out for that. That's the most leftist thing. Was literally giving you money for nothing.
And so some Republicans also signed on for that. All I'm saying
it
is
turns
that
out when you show a unified front, it's hard to fight against. It turns out one candidate saying, "Hey, I'm giving you something," while the other candidate isn't.
so
is
if that's
really
the
hard
case,
to fight
if they had
against.
so much electoral goodwill from the $2,000 checks, how come they couldn't come out and say they're for Medicare for all, they're for the new Green Deal? How come they couldn't bring up any of that? It's because they knew better. Their strategists
they would have
knew.
gotten more if they had done that. They would have gotten more votes if they had done that. Because I'm telling you, these swing districts, Georgia as a whole is a swing state now. We are a swing state. So we would be considered, we are a giant swing district. Every swing district where a candidate endorsed Medicare for all and the Green New Deal, they won. Most of the candidates
can
lost.
you cite some of those competitive districts? Because in my eyes,
I
look to, like, for instance, let's talk about a highly visible Justice Dem. Let's talk about Ilhan Omar. Out of all the other Dems that won their district, they were matched more closely with the Biden surge, but she did significantly worse than the others. I just stop trying to push for these policies where it is electorally, just not viable. If you want to elect more, that's fine, but I don't want to see. But still, compared to the other candidates that also won, she had less of a gain compared to the other areas when you compare it to how Biden,
and also had a three-way race. If you follow,
we're heading into we're approaching a topic that's actually pretty topical. About a month ago or so, Brant, I'm going to ask you because you might be headed in this direction. Do you agree with people like Jimmy Dore who think that AOC needs to force a vote on Medicare for all? Do you actually think that that's a viable strategy? Essentially letting the Justice Dems or forcing the Justice Dems to use the political goodwill that they have garnered to try and force a vote on issues that only the far left, or not far left, but only the far left is super pro, at least in terms of members of Congress, are concerned. Do you think that they should force a vote on things like Medicare for all?
So right before that, I did just post a graphic in chat that shows the district.
I can't open that one, but
okay. Yeah, but it essentially shows you like Abby Finkenauer, who is one of the more vocal ones, because she's the one I think that was the ex-CIA agent yelling about defund the police. She did not support Medicare for all. She did not support the Green New Deal. She did not win her election in a D+1 district. Meanwhile, Katie Porter, who does do those things and is very vocal about them, like everybody knows Katie Porter now. She's in an R+3 district, and she did win. Like, you have across the board candidates that are vocally for progressive legislation are doing better in swing districts.
Okay.
The Justice Dems had one major loss in 2020, and that was Kara Eastman in Nebraska 2.
Okay, you know why they won? So in 2018, they sponsored 78 candidates, right? They took a wide breadth approach. And you know what? 12 of those were challengers to incumbents, and only AOC and 6 others won. So when you say in 2020 they won across the board, it's like, yes, they realized their platform was not nationally electorally viable. They realized they can go pick areas where it more so is and sponsor those folks. And that's great. I think, if you can get more in there, that's great. That's going to force the party more left. But if your own sponsorship group understands and backs away from nationally funding these people, that is a telltale sign that it is not viable federally. It is a sign that there are areas it works, but not nationally. If I have a national poll, hold on, let me finish. If I have a national poll and it says, like 70% of Americans agree with this, it's like, that's great. That could be like 95% California, 95% New York, and that would give us these wide amounts for a nationally supported policy, but that doesn't mean anything for where these people are coming out to vote. Yes, I do understand what you're posting, that it did work for some of these areas, but it's still some of these areas. I still do not agree that if we saw Ossoff and Warnock come out and proudly start saying these, I don't think they would have won. This was a tight race in Georgia.
They would have done better. And what you're saying about Justice Democrats in 2018 really just doesn't apply, because primaries are hard to beat incumbents. You get blacklisted. Ask AOC about this. If you primary a Democrat, you are blacklisted from party resources. Parties protect themselves, and parties protect their members. If you are primarying in a contentious, in a race where that Democrat still wants their job, you are fighting a party. That is it. You are not like unless Pelosi handpicks you, like what happened in I think it was Delaware. Not Delaware, Massachusetts. I'm sorry, Massachusetts, where Kennedy wanted to be a senator. So he didn't get blacklisted, but every progressive that is primaried a member has been blacklisted. So I don't think as saying Justice Democrats didn't win many races matters at all, because you should be casting a wide net. You should be looking to win just as many races as humanly possible, because these people are coming at you with millions of dollars, while most of your challengers are coming with small dollar donations from people across the country, and that's it. And maybe word of mouth on Twitter. Like, that's all that they have. And you're saying like their lack of success rate is due to their platform, but no, their policy is popular in their districts. And if the people were as able to understand what their policy was as they are to understand that, hey, this is the guy that's in office right now, and I don't really know who he is, but whatever, he's the guy in office right now. And I saw some ad on TV where he was smiling next to a baby, so I guess he's all right.
See,
then okay. Sure.
Okay, hang on. Before you go, Aaron, let me hit you with a question, because I think Brent brought up something pretty interesting about challenging incumbents. With the incumbency rate in America being about 95% or so, do you think it's worth it, Aaron, for more progressive candidates to challenge less progressive candidates at the potential cost of just outright losing the seat to the other party? Do you think that it's worth it for and I'm going to ask Brent the same question too, because Brent kind of dodged my Jimmy Dore question.
I did. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you totally dodged that. That's okay. We'll come back to that. But do you think it's worth running more progressive candidates against less progressive candidates at the potential cost of the seat?
Well, based on what I just heard about how popular this policy is, I don't care either way. Go win somewhere it matters. Go win a competitive district where we don't have a D incumbent then. If it's the party getting in the way, go to that competitive district with those crazy ideas. And I'm sorry for using the term crazy ideas.
Are they crazy?
They're not. They're not, but in America they are. So go to that competitive district, win it, come back with the proof like, hey, see, we can even unseat Republicans with this popular policy. You do that, I'm sold. I'm done. Like,
so you think go challenge Republicans with ideas like Medicare for all. And if you
that's the proof I want to see. Because all I see, maybe it's people wanting to maintain power, but I see these interviews like, Rep Spanberg from Virginia, a Democrat. He was out there talking to the Washington Post, complaining about, hey,
by the way,
sorry,
by the way.
Apologies, let me not misgender. That's not a good start to 2021. We're just now getting a little less scuffed out here.
Please, sir, keep it 2021.
My mistake. Maybe I should just go with they to be safe. But so point is, Spanberg comes out and is talking about, we see these progressive policies, and then it becomes an attack point for the Republican counterpart, where they can just sit there and blind message socialism bad, socialism scary. I'm not saying it's true, but at the end of the day, the electorate is not they're frankly not that well informed on these things.
Yeah,
and
they're
so
not
if
as
you
good.
give them
Guess-
that firepower, it's not going to work. So again,
Guess who
you go
gives
out
them
there,
that
you
firepower?
win
Guess
that
who
competitive
gives them that
district.
firepower?
Hang on, Brent.
You win
Let
the
him-
competitive district, I'm done. Like, I fully agree. Like, that's what I want to see before I sign off on that.
So-
Had
I'm
Ossoff
talking
or Warnock done that, and they did better, like you were saying, then hats off. I'm completely
But
off
you
base
can't
here.
run candidates, and Democrats are blacklisting progressive candidates because they don't, as a party, they're fighting against these policies. As a party, the party is fighting against Green New Deal and Medicare for All. It's easy for Republicans to attack Medicare for All when the Democrats are attacking Medicare for All. If the Democrats are out here saying, hey, guess what? Medicare for All is coming for your private insurance and going to hike up your taxes, like you just watched in the every Democratic debate, then sure as hell is easy for a Republican to come out here and say that they're about to do that, even if they're lying. They're just liars.
So Aaron, let me get a definitive answer out of you. You believe that you need to wait until progressives start taking down Republicans and Republican-controlled districts before we start pushing centrist Democrats out of their seats that they already control with progressive candidates?
No, it's fine if they can primary them, but if they primary them, they better win. Okay, that's what I'm getting.
They can't primary them, and that's my issue. Is these Justice Dems had to become an organization, and they're like you're saying Justice Dems as like a thing, like, oh, in 2018 they did this. In 2018, that was literally their first election cycle as an organization. Like,
and they looked at the failures and they said, okay, it is not nationally viable. Let's target some specific places. Maybe it is a result of the party.
They did better
and them
targeting
having
with
to do that.
resources, but I mean, they took down the number 3 Dem in the House. Like you're saying, oh wow, they just had one race. Joseph Crowley was the number 3 or 4 Democrat in the House, in line to potentially be the next Speaker of the House, and he was primaried by a bartender. Like, this is the power of this legislation. So there's 2 different reasons that I think Justice Democrats have a much better model and pathway towards retaining power than centrist and bullshit. It's one, because they promise shit, and promising shit and being for something helps you in swing districts. And 2, in non-swing districts, in like Democrat plus 10 districts, these policies are very popular, as long as you're sitting out there talking about them, and you're not constantly attacking your left wing and feeding the right talking points for how to defeat these legislations. People will follow their party. Like, as stupid as it is, I would like every single person to just think about it on their own and use their own moral framework to determine their position on a policy. But for the most part, people follow their party. They listen to those leaders that they follow and say, okay, hey, is this good or is this bad? And if you have a bunch of Democrats constantly saying this bad, this bad, this bad, this bad, this bad, and guess what? Don't be shocked when independents, those centrists are going to say, well, I guess thing bad, because a lot of Democrats told me it was. And so instead of coming together and understanding that this progressive legislation is popular and your model for retaining power through the cycle that is upcoming, and saying, hey, we need to be for something, instead they are trying to be for nothing while retaining power and passing nothing.
Okay,
so while you're hold
on. I got to talk about this. I'm gonna segue a little bit then.
I'll let you
so
respond.
let's say this then. Are you at all so we come out and we go ultra progressive. Let's do it. Let's get some stuff done. That's the message, and they even do win these battles with the moderates where they get them to sign off. Okay, so let's say that's the playbook we're going by. This is the first time since 1969 that Democrats have controlled all branches of the federal government. Are you not worried about the potential whiplash there?
I believe it was 2008.
2009. Or 2008.
Yeah,
we controlled all 3.
2008. Yeah, 2008. Yeah, sorry. I just want to make sure that was right.
We had a 2/3 majority.
So, but point is, are you not worried about the
You're going
potential
back
whiplash
before 08,
if we do
quite a bit back?
If we do go hard line for these policies? I mean, like, in my eyes, I think the Biden messaging altogether is smart about unification. I do agree we can't sit there and capitulate the whole time like we did during the Obama years. But look, we are at levels of insanity previously thought unthinkable in this country. We had people storming the Capitol just last week. And, like, if you disagree that we don't need to do something to come together, like, you know, you better go buy an AR-15 and start practicing at the range, because we're gonna have some stuff going down.
Behind what? Behind what? Behind Joe Biden saying, "Oh man, I'm good." Like, Joe Biden is saying he's going to heal the soul of the nation with nothing.
Yeah,
with nothing.
Let me just
I'm not saying I know what it looks like, but I am saying you do have to be cognizant of some whiplash as well.
I'm saying I do know what it looks like, and what it looks like is passing things that help people, that genuinely help their lives. You lose power when people have no idea what the fuck you're doing for them. Because Republicans, you know what? They told them what they were doing for them. Trump banned Muslims. You know who liked that? Trump's base. Trump built some wall up. I think it was a little bit bullshit, and he boasted about, things that... But guess what? He showed his base what he was doing for them. And his base turned out in droves for him because he did what he promised to do for these people. Now he lied a lot about what he was doing, but he got the messaging out there. He did what they wanted, and they rewarded him with their votes.
Okay,
Democrats have to do the same.
I'm gonna break in here for a minute. I do want to give my 2 cents to that last topic there, but I think it's gonna fail the Democrats in 2022 if Joe Biden runs on this idea or continues with this idea of, well, let's not hurt anyone's feelings, let's not pass any legislation, let's just all kind of come together and hold hands for 2 years. I think that's bullshit, and I think it's a really easy way to lose enthusiasm that we saw in the last election here. Because now that Trump is gone, I think a lot of people are already inherently going to just be like, all right, well, it's okay now. I can go back to not giving a shit about politics. But I'm gonna give us our last question. And Brent's gonna have to actually give me an answer this time. Do you think it's worth it for progressive Dems and Justice Dems to use up the political goodwill that they have established in forcing votes on progressive issues, even if it's looking like they won't pass? Okay, is it worth it to try and essentially hold?
So specifically, what was talked about was in some progressive circles was essentially because there was only a 3-vote margin in the House, the squad could theoretically say, Nancy Pelosi, we are not voting for you unless you promise to hold a floor vote on Medicare for all. That was what was discussed by Jimmy Dore and the Movement People's Party and Breonna Gray Joy. Me personally, I was not for it. That was because the whole point of it was going to fail. Like 100%, it was going to fail. Whether some people were delusional enough to think it would pass or not, but most of the people most of the leftists calling for this knew it was going to fail. But it was about understanding which members were for and which members were not for Medicare for all. But I don't think forcing a doomed floor vote does this. Specifically, there are deep blue Dems that would probably, if Medicare for all had a chance at passing, wouldn't vote for it. They are genuinely that against it. Those Democrats, if it's a doomed floor vote, they don't care. They'll vote for it anyway. They'll vote for it in a doom vote, but when push comes to shove, the Kamala Harrises, Kamala Harris was a co-signer of Medicare for all with Bernie Sanders. Do you know what she did as soon as she got the lightest amount of pushback in a Democratic primary? She changed it, and and then she came first with some weird ass public option looking thing.
Just so expanding on the ACA is kind of like that's what Joe Biden's been focusing on, and now Kamala Harris is focusing on, is just expanding the ACA versus actually eliminating, private insurance and it all being public, that kind of thing.
So she doesn't, so it doesn't root out these and expose these deep blue Democrats that aren't actually with you, and willing to push hard for this legislation, even when it's not popular, because Democrats are attacking it too. On the other hand, you have centrist Democrats that, if push came to shove and if it looked like this thing would pass, might vote for it, because they go, hey, I don't want to be the one that stopped Medicare for all from passing. I don't want to be the doorstop to this legislation. Those could be convinced to do it if their reputation was on the line. But in a doomed vote, no, they're just going to say no and move on. And sure, it like they say, hey, we're going to primary every Democrat that says no, which is fine. I'm okay with primarying Democrats, and I'm okay with primarying anybody from the left, honestly. Primary AOC from the left if you would like. But I don't think it did quite what the goals of it would do. I don't think it got us it would get us closer to passing Medicare for all, and I would much rather focus around a build-up attempt for the next Speaker of the House. I would much rather progressives put their time and effort into finding their next speaker, because good Lord, it can't be Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem Jeffries is Nancy Pelosi, but more corporate and more centrist. Like, it's worse. Yeah. And that's who they're trying to put in right now. So progressives need to spend the next 2 years trying to find their speaker. And it can't be AOC, because she's just too contentious and too young. Genuinely.
A little too divisive. A little too hot-headed, possibly, to be the leader of the House, that kind of thing.
So find somebody, build their public profile, and build their reputation to get them in.
So at the end of the day, do you want the progressives to withhold their votes for policy if they feel that it's becoming too moderate for it to be meaningful? Yes or no?
Yes. Okay. Absolutely.
All right. Well, and before I turn it over to Aaron, do you have anyone in mind for Speaker of the House? Do you have a candidate in mind, or are you just hoping that this next 2 years we can see someone rise up into an appropriate position to where they would be able to take the Speaker of the House from Pelosi? Brent,
can you say that again? Sorry.
Do you have a candidate in mind for the new Speaker of the House to replace Pelosi?
I don't particularly. I think Katie Porter's a cool option. She kind of merges a lot of the resistance Democrat types with the progressive Democrat types. She kind of finds that Warren-ish middle ground between them. I think she would be a cool option. The issue is her district is R+2, so she would be at severe risk in a wave election. Karen Bass is kind of a leadership one, but she has some issues with ties to Scientology and some weird stuff there. She's not a Scientologist, but it just came up. It just came up with some issues. Barbara Lee, I think, was my number one. I really like Barbara Lee. She was my vice president candidate. If Bernie was to win the primary, I wanted him to choose Barbara Lee as his vice president. But she's going to be old by the time that speaker vote comes out. I don't have a specific candidate in mind, and that's a problem. Like, that's a problem for the Justice Democrats to figure out who are they centering around, who is going to be their speaker candidate, because they got to find one, because the centrists have theirs, and it's Hakeem Jeffries.
Yeah, and I think we'll look more into that as we get closer to the midterms. But let me go ahead and ask Aaron, do you think that it's politically viable for the far left to essentially kind of force the more centrist Dems in showing their support for more leftist legislation?
For them, it most definitely is. But at the end of the day, as long as we're making progress, that's fine if that's what it takes. But I just don't think, if they take a hardline stance on literally everything this entire cycle, I think we're going to get less passed than we would otherwise. and I think it's going to lead to losses in 2022. So that's fine. I support a lot of the policies, so it's difficult. Oh, no doubt. The left conservative is going to take the blame. Media machine is too tactical, but
the MSNBC conservative media machine
again,
is too tactical.
We gotta do something in this country. Again, I'm gonna go back. Like, we are at these insane levels of divisiveness, and I'm not saying we need to sit there and capitulate with the Republicans, because again, we saw that was a failure. But if you want a hard line and get it a little further left than it would be otherwise, I still want to see these things actually get across the finish line at the end of the day.
So you want to see a unified Democratic Party, but you don't want to see
I want to see them hold out. I want to see them try and push that policy left. But at the end of the day, I still want to see some votes go through to yes to see this policy get all the way up and get signed. That's what I'm hopeful. I mean, 2020 was rough, and I think as a country we showed some amazing resiliency. I mean, through the pandemic, the divisiveness of the cult of Trump, everything. We're still here. We're still getting through it every day, one day at a time. And so I'm hopeful that we can overcome this now that we have an opportunity with all three branches controlled by Democrats to actually do something and make it happen. I just don't think it's fair to force every moderate to hardline the ultra progressive policy all at once. That's not the platform that they were elected on, and that's not the platforms they're going to continue to win on going forward. And that's kind of my final thoughts really on that.
Like, you had good closing thought there.
And that was good. I think
closing thought, Brent.
The platform that they were elected on was anti-Trump, genuinely.
Yeah.
That's what.
No doubt.
So when Trump goes away, you better have something, because if you don't, the Republicans will. They will have something. And right now, I don't see much from the centrists. I mean, they're barely pushing the public option at this point. They're barely talking about the things that they want to pass. They're passing $15 minimum wage, which is pretty pog, but it's by 2026, which, what the hell, guys? Why can't we just be for something? For something. And I'm convinced that a lot of these centrist Democrats would rather sit there and be against Republicans rather than be for absolutely anything. And just one more note for the Abigail Spanberger style, who complains and cries about defund the police. It is not your job as a Democrat to police activist language. Activists are going to speak their minds, and activists are going to tell you what they want. It is not your job to tell them to shut up. It's not your job to tell them to change their slogans. It's your job to communicate what they want to the people. Because guess what? If you were to tell them, hey, the police budgets are bloated as hell and are mostly going towards buying weapons of war for police departments that don't need it, guess what? You can turn defund the police into a popular message. But instead, what you're doing is panicking, going, I'm not for defund the police, while the Republicans go, you're for defund the police. The Democrats are for defund the police. And so all they're going to do is constantly fight you on that. And so rather than explaining to the people what defund the police is, which is essentially just reappropriation of funds into different services, you get panicky and have to come out almost as a Republican. And guess what? A lot of left-wing Democrats don't want to vote for Republican too, and just won't come out to vote for you. And a lot of independents in the middle say, why would I vote for a fake Republican when I could vote for a real Republican? So again, it's not your job to police the language of activists. It's your job to explain it to your district. Unless you are actually against it, then you lost. Sorry. Be for something.
I do think that the messaging aspect of certain issues is at least on the left, is something I'd love to talk about on another day. But I'm glad we got to have a little debate on at least what the inside of the Democratic Party is going to look like the next at least 2 years, possibly 4 years, as we're moving forward towards midterms and then the 2024 election. I hope, at least just to summarize, that Democrats can work together to actually get some stuff passed, because Republicans are going to go back to the classic strategy of we're not in control, so we're full obstructionist. And it would be just a huge win for Republicans if we got absolutely nothing done for the next 2 years. It'll look for Republicans to take the House back, and probably the Senate too. And then, in 2024, try to install a Republican president. Because look, Democrats got nothing done, or the stuff that they got done was super radical. So I expect them to go into full obstructionist mode. So if we have a bunch of Joe Manchins running around, not even wanting to look at, a large, stimulus package for the economy, it's going to be a long 2 years of pretty much nothing getting done except Biden posturing and being like, well, I wish we could just work to, come together and work together and get something done. But just, it looks like we need more time to heal before we can get things done. And I just hope that weak bullshit doesn't cost us in 2022.
But can I throw one last thing?
Yeah.
I already had my closing thoughts, so I'm gonna let it go.
It.
But I do sincerely hope that we appoint some like ultra progressives to the administrative agencies. That's where most of the law in this country comes from, and that's where we're gonna see some real change real fast.
Well, thankfully,
don't worry,
Bernie Sanders.
Nancy Pelosi already got rid of Katie Porter on the Financial Oversight Committee because she could. So we're already starting out great with giving a straight up win to financial services industries by removing the most popular member on that and like vocal member on that board from it. Katie Porter.
Yeah, but didn't we then go and put AOC on the Oversight and Reform Committee?
Look, they got some positions, but removing Katie Porter from her most public role was
no. I hear you. I hear you. I'm just saying.
That was a massive shot at. I feel like aimed at her specifically because I wonder who got paid. Honestly, who got paid to get her off that committee because she was destroying CEOs.
I want to address something from Narab 52 on that Trump tax cuts. Yeah, ain't that the truth? What a play from Trump to have his magical shitty tax cuts that absolutely blew up the deficit. We're not going to get into this, but have them end as he would be leaving office. I hate that. It's so disgusting. It's the same problem we see with a lot of publicly traded companies where we can't focus on long-term growth because they know they got to do it quarterly for their earnings calls. Absolutely disgusting, but good point. But I'll let it go. Again, we got to find a balance. Need some unity, Otherwise, if you think we should just hardline everything, I'm sorry, buddy, but for real, you should consider that AR-15 and some training at the range because we're already at some insane levels. So,
yeah, I'm looking for Democrat unity, and then hopefully, the continued great fissure of the Republican Party that's going on as they decide what to do about Trump. But
and you know what, everybody, we'll be here to cover it here on twitch.tv/leftist audio. So keep us honest on this one. Also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the places you can find podcasts that are good. You just got to filter by leftist audio and then it'll make sure it's a good podcast for you. So look us up on there at Audio Leftist on Twitter. One day we'll have that handle still on that. Tweet at Leftist Audio. Let them know we need that tag. Don't really brigade it. It's against policy. But all jokes aside, continue following us. We appreciate all the support.
So. VODs on YouTube. So yeah.
Yes, VODs are on YouTube. And hopefully highlights soon. We'll see about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, love you all. Thank you for stopping by. Bye.